Welcome to Willow Creek, where one dance can ruin a reputation and one man can steal everything you thought you owned. Settle in for a story of danger, desire, and the kind of choices that changed two lives forever. Willa Sawyer saw him the instant he walked through the door of the town hall. Every woman in Willow Creek had heard the stories about Micah Hale, the bounty hunter who never missed, the man who brought in 3 fugitives in 1 week and left 2 more dead in the desert, the kind of trouble you cross the street to avoid. But he crossed the room to her. The barn dance was already half scandal. Willa had come alone, which respectable widows were not supposed to do, and she had danced twice with the banker's son, which raised eyebrows all the way to the church ladies in the corner. But when Micah Hale stopped 3 feet from her and held out one calloused hand, the music seemed to stutter. She should have refused. She knew better. But his eyes held something she had not expected. Not arrogance. Not the cold calculation everyone whispered about. Something closer to loneliness. Maybe. Or recognition. As if he saw past the carefully maintained respectability and straight into the part of her that was still wild. So she took his hand. The waltz was slow and too close. His hand settled at her waist with the kind of certainty that made her pulse kick hard. He smelled like leather and dust and something sharper. Maybe gunpowder. She kept her gaze fixed somewhere past his shoulder, but she felt the weight of every stare in the room. "You are making a mistake," she told herself. "This will cost you." But his voice was low and rough when he finally spoke, and it did not sound like the voice of a killer. "You are Willa Sawyer." She met his eyes then. "I am. I have heard about your ranch, Juniper Ranch. You breed horses." "I do." She kept her tone flat, guarded. "And you hunt men." His jaw tightened, but he did not look away. "I do what I am paid to do." "Then we both survive on reputations we did not choose." Something shifted in his expression. Not quite a smile, but close. Maybe. The music ended too soon. He released her and stepped back, but not before she caught the flicker of something unguarded in his face. She turned and walked straight out the side door into the cool night air, her heart hammering against her ribs. Behind her, the whispers started immediately. 3 days later, Micah Hale rode up to Juniper Ranch with a folded paper in his coat pocket, and a choice he did not want to make. Willa was on the porch before he dismounted. She held a tin cup of coffee in both hands, but her posture was all steel. "If you are here to apologize for the other night, you can turn around." He swung down from the saddle and pulled the paper from his pocket. "I am not here to apologize." Her eyes narrowed. "Then why?" He held out the notice. "The bank sent me." She set the cup down on the porch rail and took the paper. Her hands did not shake, but her face went pale as she read. "This is a foreclosure notice." "It is. I made my payment. I sent it 2 weeks ago. The bank says it did not arrive." He kept his voice even, professional. "You have 30 days to settle the debt, or the property goes to auction." She looked up at him, and the fury in her eyes was sharp enough to cut. "And they sent you to deliver it. The man with the gun." "In case I fought back." He felt the hit land, but he did not flinch. "I do not work for the bank. I was hired to track a fugitive passing through town. The banker asked me to bring this out as a favor. A favor. She laughed, bitter and low. You danced with me 3 nights ago. And now you show up with a piece of paper that says I lose everything I have built. I did not know. You should have. She turned her back and walked into the house, letting the door slam behind her. Micah stood in the yard for a long moment, the notice still in his hand. He could have left it on the porch and ridden away. That would have been easier. But something about the way her voice had cracked at the end kept him rooted in place. He folded the notice, set it on the porch rail beside her abandoned coffee cup, and rode back toward town with a taste of dust and regret in his mouth. Willa went to the bank the next morning with her receipt in hand, and her pride barely held together. The banker, a heavy-set man named Thornton with soft hands and a harder smile, listened to her explanation and shook his head. I am sorry, Miss Sawyer, but we have no record of your payment. I have the receipt. She laid it on his desk. I sent it with the mail coach 2 weeks ago. Thornton glanced at the receipt and pushed it back toward her. Paper can be forged. Without the actual payment, the foreclosure stands. Her hands curled into fists. You know I sent that money. What I know is that you are 3 months behind on interest, and the bank has been more than patient. I was never 3 months behind. I made every payment on time until this one, and I can prove I sent it. Thornton leaned back in his chair, his expression settling into something that made her skin crawl. Miss Sawyer, you are a woman alone on a failing ranch. The bank has been generous, but generosity has limits. If you cannot make the payment, perhaps you should consider other arrangements. She knew what he meant. She had heard the rumors about other women in similar situations, the quiet suggestions, the offers that came with conditions. I will get you the money, she said through her teeth. 30 days. He smiled. Or the property goes to auction. She turned to leave and nearly collided with Micah Hale in the doorway. He stepped aside to let her pass, but she caught the look on his face. Not cold, not indifferent. Angry. She pushed past him and out into the street, her breath coming too fast. Micah watched her go, then turned back to Thornton. That payment arrived. Thornton did not look up from his ledger. I have no record of it. You lost it. Or you are lying. Now Thornton looked up, his expression smooth and unbothered. Careful, Hale. You are a hired gun, not a lawyer. Micah leaned both hands on the desk and lowered his voice. I am also the man you asked to deliver that notice. If I find out you are running a scheme to steal land from women who cannot fight back, I will make it my business. Thornton smiled. You have no proof. And even if you did, who would believe you? You are a bounty hunter, Hale. Nobody trusts you either. Micah straightened, his jaw tight. Then I suppose we understand each other. He walked out before he did something that would land him in a cell. Willa was in the corral with her best mare when Micah rode back to the ranch that evening. She did not look up when he dismounted, but she felt the weight of his presence like a hand at her back. He walked to the fence and leaned against the rail, watching her work. The mare was young and skittish, bred for speed but not yet trained for a rider. Willa moved slow and steady, her voice low and calm, until the mare finally let her touch its shoulder. You are good with them, Micah said. I have to be. She kept her eyes on the horse. It is the only thing keeping this place alive. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, I think Thornton is stealing from you. She stilled. What? Your payment arrived. I would bet my last dollar on it. He pocketed it or he sent it somewhere else, and now he is using the foreclosure to pressure you. Willa turned to face him, her heart kicking hard. Why would he do that? Because men like Thornton see women like you as easy targets. You have land, you have no husband, and you have no one to fight for you. Her throat tightened. So what do I do? Micah met her eyes. You fight back. How? I have no proof, no allies. The bank owns half this town. Then you make allies. He hesitated, then added, starting with me. She laughed, sharp and bitter. You? The man who brought me the foreclosure notice? I made a mistake. His voice was low, rough. I should have asked questions before I rode out here. I should have seen what Thornton was doing. I did not. But I see it now, and I am not walking away. Why? She stepped closer, her eyes searching his face. Why do you care? He looked away, his jaw tight. Because I know what it feels like to be used. And because you are the first person in this town who looked at me like I was more than a gun for hire. The words hung in the air between them, raw and unguarded. Willa swallowed hard. If we do this, if we fight him, it will not be quiet. People will talk. They already are. Let them talk. Micah turned back to her, and his eyes were steady. I have been alone my whole life, Sawyer. I am used to it. But if I can stop one man from stealing your home, maybe that is worth something. She held his gaze for a long moment. Then she nodded. All right. What is your plan? The plan was simple and dangerous. If Thornton thought Willa was alone, he would keep pushing. But if she had a man standing beside her, someone with a reputation sharp enough to cut through gossip and fear, Thornton might back off long enough for them to find proof. So they made a show of it. The church social was the perfect stage. Half the town turned out for Sunday supper, and Willa walked in with Micah Hale at her side like she had every right to be there. His hand rested lightly at the small of her back, a touch that looked casual, but felt like a brand. The room went quiet. Willa lifted her chin and met the stares head on. Micah said nothing, but his presence was louder than words. He was not a man you crossed lightly, and everyone in the room knew it. They filled their plates and sat together at a corner table. The whispers started immediately, a low hum of speculation and scandal that followed them like smoke. Miss Sawyer. A voice called from across the room. The pastor's wife, a thin woman with a pinched mouth and sharp eyes. I did not expect to see you here tonight. Or your companion. Willa forced a smile. Mr. Hale has been kind enough to help me with some business matters. Business matters. The woman's tone dripped disbelief. How convenient. Micah leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. I go where I am needed, ma'am. Miss Sawyer has been dealing with some trouble at the bank. I thought she could use a friend. The word friend landed like a stone in still water. The pastor's wife sniffed. Well, I suppose we all need friends from time to time. Though I hope you are careful, Miss Sawyer. Reputation is a fragile thing. Willa met her gaze and did not blink. I am aware. The conversation moved on, but the damage was done. By morning, every household in Willow Creek would know that Willa Sawyer was keeping company with the bounty hunter, which was exactly what they needed. Micah stayed at the ranch that night. Not in the house, he was careful about that, but in the small bunkhouse where her hired hand used to sleep. before she could no longer afford to pay him. It was safer, he said. If Thornton decided to escalate, she should not be alone. Willa did not argue, but late that night, when she could not sleep, she found herself standing on the porch with a lamp in her hand, staring out at the dark shape of the bunkhouse across the yard. She told herself she was just checking, making sure he had not ridden off. But when the door opened and Micah stepped out into the moonlight, she knew she had been hoping for exactly this. He crossed the yard slowly, his coat unbuttoned, his expression cautious. You should be asleep. So should you. He stopped at the bottom of the porch steps and looked up at her. I am not used to sleeping in one place for long. She set the lamp down on the rail. How long have you been doing this? Hunting men. Too long. His voice was rough, low. Since the war ended. You fought. Everyone fought. He looked away. Not everyone came back the same. She heard the weight in his words. The thing he was not saying. What did you see? He shook his head. Nothing you need to carry. But you carry it. He met her eyes then, and she saw the truth there. The shadows. The guilt. The kind of wounds that never quite healed. Every day, Willa came down the steps and stood close enough to feel the heat of him. You are not what they say you are. And what do they say? That you are dangerous. That you are cold. That you do not care about anything except the bounty. He smiled, but it did not reach his eyes. Maybe they are right. No. She reached out and touched his arm, a light pressure that made him go still. You are here. You did not have to be, but you are. He looked down at her hand, then back at her face. I do not know how to be anything else, Sawyer. This is all I have. Then we are the same. She held his gaze. Because this ranch is all I have, and I am not losing it. His hand came up to cover hers, rough and warm. Then we fight. Together, she said. Together. They stood there for a moment longer, the space between them charged and fragile. Then Micah stepped back, breaking the contact, and nodded toward the bunkhouse. Get some sleep. Tomorrow we start digging. Willa watched him walk away, her pulse still hammering in her throat. The mail coach office was their first stop. If Willa's payment had been sent, there would be a record. A signature. Something. The clerk, a nervous man named Potter, looked up when they walked in and immediately paled. Mr. Hale. Miss Sawyer. What can I do for you? Micah leaned against the counter, his posture relaxed, but his eyes sharp. We need to see your records from 2 weeks ago. Specifically, any payments sent to the bank. Potter swallowed. I am not sure I can do that. Privacy. You understand. Willa stepped forward. That payment was mine, Mr. Potter. I have a right to know if it was delivered. Potter hesitated, then pulled a ledger from under the counter. He flipped through the pages, his hands shaking slightly, and stopped. Here. A payment from Juniper Ranch, addressed to Willow Creek Bank. Sent on the 14th. Signed for by. He squinted. By a Mr. L. Thornton. Willa felt the world tilt. He signed for it himself. Micah straightened, his expression hard. Do you have a copy of that receipt? Potter looked between them, his face pale. I am not supposed to. This is theft, Potter. Micah kept his voice low, but the threat was clear. You are holding evidence of a crime. You can give it to us now, or I can come back with the sheriff." Potter pulled a folded paper from a drawer and slid it across the counter. "Please do not say where you got it." Willa took the paper, her hands shaking. "Thank you." They walked out into the sunlight, and for the first time in weeks, Willa felt something close to hope. But Micah was already scanning the street, his expression grim. "Thornton knows we are asking questions. He will move fast now." "Then so do we," Willa said. They rode back to the ranch, with the receipt tucked safely in Micah's coat. But halfway down the road, he pulled his horse to a stop and turned in the saddle, his gaze fixed on something behind them. Willa followed his line of sight and felt her stomach drop. 3 riders, coming fast. Micah's hand went to his gun. "Get to the house." "No." Willa kept her voice steady. "If they are here for me, running will not help. If they are here for you, I need you out of the line of fire." The riders pulled up 20 feet away. 2 of them were ranch hands Willa recognized from Thornton's property. The third was a man she did not know, lean and hard-eyed, with a gun belt slung low on his hips. Micah dismounted slowly, positioning himself between Willa and the strangers. "What do you want?" The hard-eyed man smiled. "Mr. Thornton says you have been asking questions, Hale. He does not appreciate it. Thornton can tell me himself. He sent us instead." The man rested his hand on his gun. "He also says Miss Sawyer here has been making threats, claiming he stole from her. That is a serious accusation." Willa slid from her saddle and stepped up beside Micah. "I have proof. Proof can disappear." The man's smile widened. "So can people." Micah shifted slightly, and Willa felt the coiled tension in him, the readiness. "You are making a mistake." "Am I?" The man looked past Micah to Willa. "Last chance, ma'am. Drop this, and Thornton might let you keep the ranch. Keep pushing, and you lose everything." Willa met his gaze and did not flinch. "Tell Thornton I will see him at the auction." The man shrugged. "Your funeral." He turned his horse and rode off, the other 2 following. Micah did not relax until they were out of sight. Then he turned to Willa, his expression dark. "That was a threat. I know. He could send more men. Men who will not stop at words. Then we move faster." Willa swung back into her saddle. "We take the receipt to the sheriff. Tonight." The sheriff, a gray-haired man named Carver, listened to their story with a carefully neutral expression. When they finished, he leaned back in his chair and folded his hands over his stomach. "That is a serious accusation, Miss Sawyer. I have proof." Willa laid the receipt on his desk. "Thornton signed for my payment himself, 2 weeks before he sent Mr. Hale out with a foreclosure notice." Carver picked up the paper and studied it. "This does not prove he kept the money. It proves he lied," Micah said. "He told Miss Sawyer the payment never arrived. He signed for it personally." Carver set the receipt down. "Mr. Thornton is a respected member of this community. He sits on the town council. He funds the church. If I accuse him of theft based on one piece of paper, I will need more than your word to back it up. What more do you need?" Willa felt her control slipping. "He stole from me. He threatened me. He sent men to my ranch." "Did he?" Carver raised an eyebrow. "Or did some ranch hands ride out on their own? They said Thornton sent them. And you believed them." Carver stood. "Miss Sawyer, I understand you are upset, but unless you have concrete evidence of a crime, there is nothing I can do." Willa stared at him, the realization settling cold in her chest. "You are protecting him." Carver's expression did not change. "I am following the law." Micah stepped forward, his voice low and dangerous. "You are taking his money. Careful, Hale." Carver's hand moved to his gun belt. "You are already on thin ice in this town. Do not make it worse." Micah held his gaze for a long moment. Then he turned and walked out. Willa followed, her throat tight with fury and despair. Outside, the street was dark and empty. Willa leaned against the hitching post, her hands shaking. "What do we do now?" Micah was silent for a moment. Then he said, "We go to the auction." "And do what?" "Whatever it takes." The auction was set for noon the next day. Willa spent the morning packing what little she could carry, her movements mechanical, her mind numb. She had fought as hard as she knew how, and it had not been enough. Micah found her in the barn, wrapping her mother's old quilt in oilcloth. He did not say anything. He just stood there, watching, until she finally looked up. "I am sorry," he said. "You have nothing to be sorry for." Her voice cracked. "You tried. I should have done more." She shook her head. "No one could have done more. Thornton owns this town. He owns the sheriff. He owns the bank. I was never going to win." Micah crossed the barn and took the quilt from her hands. He set it aside and turned her to face him. "Listen to me. You are not losing this ranch. It is done, Micah. It is not done until I say it is done." His hands gripped her shoulders, firm and steady. "I spent 10 years tracking men who hurt people and getting paid for it. I told myself it did not matter, that I was just doing a job. But it did matter, Sawyer. Every time I pulled the trigger, it mattered. And this matters too." Tears burned at the back of her eyes. "What are you saying?" "I am saying I am not walking away. Not from this. Not from you." She looked up at him, and the rawness in his face broke something open inside her. "Why?" "Because you saw me," he said quietly. "You looked at me like I was more than a gun. And because, when I am with you, I feel like maybe I could be." Her breath hitched. "Micah." He pulled her close, and she let herself lean into him. Just for a moment. His arms were solid and warm, and she felt the steady beat of his heart against her cheek. "We are going to that auction," he said into her hair. "And we are going to fight." She nodded, her hands fisting in his coat. Together. Together. The auction was held in the town square, on a wooden platform built for cattle sales and public humiliation. Willa stood beside the auctioneer, her chin high, her hands clasped in front of her to hide the shaking. The crowd was larger than she expected. Half the town had turned out, some out of sympathy, most out of curiosity. Thornton stood near the front, his expression smug and satisfied. Micah stood at the back, his arms crossed, his gaze locked on Thornton. The auctioneer, a rail-thin man with a reedy voice, cleared his throat. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are here today to auction the property known as Juniper Ranch, totaling 160 acres with structures, to settle a debt owed to Willow Creek Bank. Bidding starts at $500. A hand went up. 500. Another voice. 600. Willa felt her throat close. This was it. The end of everything she had built. Then Thornton raised his hand. $1,000. The crowd went quiet. No one was going to outbid the banker. The auctioneer looked around. $1,000. Going once. Going twice. 2,000. Every head turned. Micah stepped forward, his voice clear and steady. $2,000. Thornton's smile faltered. Hale, you do not have that kind of money. Micah walked to the front of the crowd and pulled a folded paper from his coat. Actually, I do. Bounty payments. Saved over 10 years. I just cashed them in this morning. He held up the bank draft, and the crowd murmured. Thornton's face went red. You are bluffing. Try me. Micah's eyes were cold. Or better yet, explain to everyone here why you signed for Miss Sawyer's payment 2 weeks ago, and then claimed it never arrived. The crowd erupted. Willa stared at Micah, her heart hammering. He had bet everything, every dollar he had, on her. Thornton looked around, his composure cracking. That is a lie. Micah pulled out the receipt. Here is the proof. Signed by you. Delivered to you. And then you turned around and foreclosed on her ranch. The sheriff pushed through the crowd. Hale, you need to stand down. No. Micah did not look away from Thornton. You want to arrest someone, arrest him. For theft. For fraud. For using his position to steal from people who cannot fight back. Thornton stepped forward, his face twisted with rage. You have no authority here, Hale. You are nothing but a hired killer, and you are a thief. Micah's voice was quiet, deadly. But the difference is, I am not pretending to be anything else. The crowd was on Micah's side now. Willa could feel the shift, the anger turning toward Thornton. The auctioneer looked between them, panicked. I do not know what to do. Give the ranch back to Miss Sawyer, Micah said, and let the town council decide what to do with Thornton. Thornton opened his mouth to argue, but the sheriff stepped in, his expression grim. Mr. Thornton, I think you should come with me. The crowd began to disperse, the murmur of voices rising in speculation and gossip. Willa stood frozen on the platform, her mind struggling to catch up. Micah climbed the steps and held out his hand. Come on. She took it, her fingers trembling. You bet everything. I did. Why? Because it was worth it. He pulled her down from the platform and into the relative privacy of the space between two buildings. Because you are worth it. Willa looked up at him, tears streaming down her face. I do not know how to repay you. You do not have to. His hands framed her face, rough and careful. I did not do it for payment. Then why? Because I am tired of being alone, Sawyer. And because when I look at you, I see a future I did not think I could have. Her breath caught. Micah. He kissed her then, slow and deliberate, and she felt the world shift beneath her feet. Not the frantic desperation of fear, but something deeper. Something that felt like coming home. When he pulled back, his eyes were steady. I do not know how to be anything but what I am. But if you will have me, I will spend the rest of my life trying to be the man you see when you look at me. She smiled through her tears. I already see him. They rode back to Juniper Ranch together. The late afternoon sun turning the prairie gold. Micah had left his duster and gun belt at the boarding house in town. Without them, he looked younger, less guarded, more like the man he might have been if the war had never happened. Willa walked him to the corral, where her horses were grazing in the soft light. "You do not have to stay," she said quietly. "I know you have work, bounties to collect. I am done with that." He leaned against the fence rail beside her. "I told the marshal this morning. I am finished hunting. What will you do?" He looked at her, a small smile tugging at his mouth. "I thought I might try ranching. If a certain horse breeder is willing to teach me." Her heart swelled. "You want to stay. I want to build something. With you. If you will have me." She reached for his hand, lacing their fingers together. "I will have you." They stood there in the quiet, the horses moving slow and easy in the corral, the sky stretching wide and endless above them. For the first time in years, Willa felt safe. The first month was hard. Thornton was arrested and charged with fraud, but the bank was in chaos, and Willa spent weeks sorting through the mess he had left behind. Micah worked beside her, learning the ranch, fixing fences, breaking horses, and slowly building the kind of life he had never thought he deserved. They did not rush things. They were both too scarred for that. But every evening, when the work was done, they sat together on the porch and talked until the stars came out. One night, Micah pulled a small wooden box from his pocket and set it on the rail between them. Willa looked at it, then at him. "What is this?" He opened the box. Inside was a simple gold band, worn smooth with age. It was my mother's, the only thing I have left from before the war. Her throat tightened. "Micah, I am not good with words, Sawyer. But I know what I want, and I want you. Every day. For the rest of my life." She took the ring, her hands shaking. "Yes." He smiled, and it was the first time she had seen him look truly happy. "Yes?" "Yes." He slipped the ring onto her finger, and she leaned into him, her head resting against his shoulder. The prairie stretched out before them, wide and wild, and full of promise. And for the first time in a long time, both of them believed in second chances. 6 months later, Juniper Ranch was thriving. Willa's herd had grown, and Micah had proven to be a natural horseman. The town had slowly accepted them, though the gossip never quite died. But they did not care. They had each other, and that was enough. On a clear spring morning, they stood together in the corral, watching a new foal take its first shaky steps. Micah wrapped an arm around Willa's shoulders and pulled her close. "You know, I used to think I did not deserve this. A home, a future, someone like you. And now I think maybe I just needed to stop running long enough to find it." He kissed the top of her head. "Thank you for giving me a reason to stay." She turned in his arms and looked up at him, her eyes bright. "Thank you for fighting for me. Always," he said. And he meant it. The sun rose higher, painting the prairie in gold and green. And the two of them stood together, watching the light spread across their land. They had fought for this, bled for it, risked everything for it, and it was worth every moment.